The rejection had happened 3 days ago, but Aller Moonstone still felt like she was drowning in its aftermath. 3 days since Marcus Blackwood, the alpha she had believed was her destined mate, had looked at her in front of the entire Silverpine pack and said the words that shattered her world. "I, Marcus Blackwood, reject you, Aller Moonstone, as my mate." The pack had gasped. Some looked away in pity. Others whispered behind their hands, and a few even laughed at her humiliation. But the worst part wasn't the public spectacle, nor the physical pain of a rejected mate bond tearing at her chest. The worst part was that she understood why he had done it. Era was nobody. An Omega from a low-ranking family with no political connections, no special abilities, and nothing to offer an ambitious alpha except genuine love and loyalty. Marcus, on the other hand, was the son of the pack's beta and destined for leadership. He needed a mate who could advance his position, not drag it down. So she had done the only thing she could. She left, packed the little she owned, and walked out of Silverpine territory before the sun rose the next morning, knowing that staying would only prolong the agony for everyone involved. Better to disappear and let Marcus find the politically advantageous mate he clearly wanted. For 3 days, Alara wandered the neutral territories between packlands, trying to figure out where a rejected Omega with nothing to her name was supposed to go. Most packs wouldn't accept a rejected wolf. The stigma was too strong. The assumption being that if your own mate didn't want you, something must be fundamentally wrong with you. That afternoon, the snow began to fall, and by evening it had turned into a full blizzard. Era found shelter in a small cave, built a meager fire with the last of her supplies, and tried not to think about the fact that she might actually freeze to death out here. Maybe that would be better than living with the constant ache of rejection, the feeling of being fundamentally unwanted. She was just beginning to drift into exhausted sleep when she heard it, a sound that made every hair on her body stand on end. It was a howl, but not like any she had heard before. Weak and pained, barely audible over the wind, and coming from somewhere very close.
窗体顶端，窗体底端。
Every instinct told her to stay inside the cave and ignore the sound. She had her own survival to think about, and getting involved with an unknown wolf could be dangerous. But the howl came again, weaker this time, and despite everything she'd been through, despite the rejection that had nearly broken her, she couldn't walk away from a creature in pain. She pushed out into the blizzard, following the sound through sheets of snow that made it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. It took her 15 minutes of searching before she found him, and when she did, her breath caught. The wolf was enormous, easily the biggest she had ever seen, even while collapsed in the snow and clearly dying. Power radiated from him, something so strong her Omega instincts wanted to bow without being told. His fur was thick and beautiful, though soaked with blood from multiple serious wounds. "Oh goddess," Alara whispered, dropping to her knees beside him. "What happened to you?" The wolf's eyes opened at the sound of her voice, and something electric shot through her. His eyes were an unusual color, sharp, aware, intelligent even through the pain, and they locked on her with an intensity that made her chest tighten. "I'm going to help you," she promised, though she had no idea how. Her supplies were nearly gone, and her medical knowledge was basic at best. "Just hold on, okay?" Getting the massive wolf back to her cave was almost impossible, but she managed through sheer determination and what felt like desperation. By the time she had him settled near her small fire, she was soaked with melted snow and shaking from exhaustion, but she refused to rest. The wounds were bad, deep gashes that looked like they had come from claws or teeth, still bleeding even though hours must have passed. Alara tore what she had left of her clean clothing into makeshift bandages, packed the injuries with snow to slow the bleeding, and tried to remember every scrap of field medicine her mother had taught her before she died. "You're going to be okay," she murmured as she worked, not sure if he could understand but needing to say the words. "I won't let you die. I know what it feels like to want to give up, to think it might be easier to let go. But you're going to fight. Do you hear me? You're going to live." The wolf's eyes followed her every movement, and more than once he made soft sounds that felt like answers. As the hours passed and she kept cleaning blood, changing bandages, and warming him with her small fire, she found herself talking more freely than she had in days. I was rejected, she admitted quietly, her hands gentle as she checked the bandages.
窗体顶端，窗体底端。
3 days ago, in front of my entire pack, the alpha I thought was my mate told everyone he didn't want me. And the worst part is, I can't even blame him. I'm nobody special, just an omega with nothing to offer. The wolf made a low sound that might have been disagreement, and tears pricked at her eyes. You're sweet to pretend that's not true, she said with a sad smile. But we both know how the world works. Status matters, power matters, and love. She laughed bitterly. Love doesn't matter at all when measured against political advantage. She worked through the night, barely sleeping, checking the wolf's wounds and keeping the fire going despite her dwindling supply of wood. Several times she thought she was losing him, his breathing becoming shallow and his body going still. But each time she spoke urgently, begged him to hold on, and somehow he would rally. Why am I fighting so hard for you? Aller asked as false dawn began to lighten the sky. I don't even know you. You could be dangerous. You could attack me the moment you're strong enough. But I can't. Her voice broke. I can't watch another living thing suffer when I have the power to help. Even if I'm broken and rejected and worthless, at least I can do this. At least I can try to save you. The wolf's eyes opened again, fixing on her face with that same intense stare, and she felt something shift in her chest. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but it felt like a tiny crack in the wall of pain that had surrounded her heart since the rejection. As true sunrise approached, the blizzard finally began to ease. Aller was dozing against the cave wall, exhausted from her night of desperate healing, when sounds from outside jerked her awake. Not the wind or snow this time, but voices, many voices coming from multiple directions. Aller moved to the cave entrance and felt her blood run cold at what she saw. Wolves were everywhere, dozens of them in both human and animal form, searching through the snow-covered landscape with urgency and purpose, and all heading in her direction, drawn by the smoke from her fire or perhaps by some scent they were tracking. Fear flooded through her. This many wolves moving together with such purpose could only mean one thing. This was a pack on a mission, and she was alone and vulnerable with no one to protect her. If they decided she had done something wrong, or if the wolf she had been tending belonged to one of them, she might be in danger. She turned back to the wolf, intending to wake him and warn him that his pack was coming, but stopped short at what she saw. The massive creature was watching her with those intense eyes, and there was something almost like apology in his expression. Your pack is here, Aller said, trying to keep her voice steady despite her fear. You should probably let them know you're okay before they... The rest of her sentence died as the wolf's form began to shimmer and change.
窗体顶端，窗体底端。
Aller had seen wolves shift before, but never with this kind of power, never with an energy that made the very air around her crackle like lightning. Within seconds the massive wolf was no longer a wolf, and the moment he became a man, the breath left her lungs. He was beautiful in a way that went far beyond looks. It was the sheer presence he carried, a force that filled the cave even while he was injured and wrapped in her crude bandages. Even exhausted, even pale from blood loss, he looked exactly like what he was, an alpha of overwhelming strength and authority. Who are you? Aller whispered, though part of her already knew. My name is Theron Stormcrown, he said, his voice rough from disuse but still carrying a command that made her Omega instincts sit up in full attention. And I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The words slammed into her like a physical strike. The Alpha King. She had spent the night tending the most powerful wolf alive, had touched him, spoken to him, confessed her humiliation to him as if he were just some wounded creature. I didn't know, she stammered, panic rising as she backed away. Your Majesty, I'm so sorry. I should have shown more respect. I shouldn't have touched you without permission. Aller. The way he said her name stopped her mid-spiral. You saved my life. You spent the night keeping me alive when I would have died in the snow. There is nothing to apologize for. But Your Majesty. A shout cut her off, echoing from outside the cave, and in the next heartbeat the entrance filled with wolves in human form, their faces a mix of relief and worry.
Thank the goddess. We've been searching all night. Are you hurt? What happened?
Theron's eyes never left Allers as he answered his people. I was ambushed by rogues 20 miles north of here. They used silver and left me to die in the storm. I managed to shift and follow my instincts south. But I would have died if not for this Omega, who found me and spent the entire night saving my life. Every gaze swung toward Alla. She wanted to shrink into the stone wall behind her. These were the Alpha King's personal guard, wolves of unmatched skill and loyalty, and the weight of their eyes was almost suffocating. Some looked grateful, some suspicious, some openly stunned. She's a rogue, one of them said, a tall female alpha with sharp eyes and sharper authority in her voice. Alone in neutral territory with no pack scent. Why would a rogue risk herself to help anyone? Because she has a kind heart, Theron said, the answer leaving no room for argument. He tried to stand but swayed dangerously. Alla reacted before she thought, moving to support him despite the intimidating presence of a dozen powerful wolves watching her every move. You need to rest, she whispered, her healer's instinct pushing past her fear. Those wounds are serious, and you've lost a lot of blood. If you try to move too much right now, you'll tear them open again. Listen to her, Theron told his guards with a faint smile. She's been giving me orders all night, and I've learned it's easier to just obey. Several guards exchanged looks Alara couldn't read, but they stepped back, giving her room as she helped Theron ease back down beside the fire. We need to get you back to the palace, the female alpha said. Our healers can treat those wounds properly, and later. Later, Theron cut in. Right now, I want to hear how the search went. How long was I missing? 14 hours, Your Majesty. We've had every available wolf searching since you didn't return from your scouting mission last evening. 14 hours. Alara had spent 14 hours keeping the Alpha King alive without even knowing who he was. The absurdity of it might have made her laugh if she wasn't so terrified about what came next. Your Majesty, she murmured, inching toward the cave entrance. Now that your pack is here, you don't need me anymore. I should probably go. No. The single word hit with such authority that Alara froze where she stood. You're not going anywhere. Not yet. But I'm just a rogue Omega. You don't need. What I need, Theron said, his eyes locking on hers with quiet intensity, is to speak with the woman who saved my life. The woman who spent the entire night tending my wounds and telling me her pain. The woman who told a dying wolf she knew what it felt like to want to give up. Heat rushed into Alara's face, embarrassment burning through her. She had forgotten he could understand everything she'd said, every confession about rejection, worthlessness, and despair. You were rejected, he continued, and several guards gasped. 3 days ago, by an alpha named Marcus Blackwood of the Silver Pine Pack. How do you know that? Alara whispered. Because you told me last night while you were saving my life. You told me everything. His expression softened, all command melting into something far gentler. And I want you to understand something. Marcus Blackwood is a fool. Any alpha who would reject an Omega with your compassion, your strength, your willingness to put another's life above your own, is too stupid to deserve you. The words cracked something deep inside her chest, and tears spilled before she could stop them. Don't cry, Theron said softly. Please don't cry. I can't stand to see you hurting after everything you did for me. I'm sorry, Alara choked out through her tears. I'm not used to anyone saying kind things about me. Especially not after the rejection. Well, you'd better get used to it, he replied with a small smile. Because I have a lot more kind things to say. Starting with the fact that during the night we spent together, something happened. The mate bond formed between us. The cave fell into absolute silence. Era stared at Theon, stunned, her mind refusing to process the words. The female alpha guard looked like she might faint. Several others exchanged excited whispers. That's impossible, Era finally managed. I was already rejected. The bond with Marcus was never a true mate bond, Theon said gently. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. Era, if Marcus could reject you, it's because you were never meant for him. You were meant for me. But you're the Alpha King, Era protested, her voice tightening with panic. You can't be mated to a rejected Omega with no pack, no status. It would be a scandal. It would undermine your authority. You need someone powerful, someone connected, someone who can help you lead. Not a broken wolf who. You are not broken. Theon's voice held such unwavering certainty that Era fell silent. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You survived a rejection that would have destroyed most wolves. You left your pack rather than become a burden. And when you found a dying stranger, you used your last supplies and stayed awake all night to save his life. That isn't broken, Era. That's extraordinary. But I can't be a queen, she whispered. I don't know how to lead. I don't know anything about politics or diplomacy. Neither did I when I became king, Theon said with a soft smile. Leadership can be learned. But compassion, your ability to see worth in others even while you're hurting, can't be taught. And that's exactly what I need in a mate. The female Alpha Guard stepped forward, her expression warm now instead of wary. Your Majesty, may I speak freely? Always, Commander Selene. I've served you for 50 years, and in all that time, I've never seen you look at anyone the way you're looking at this Omega. If she's your mate, then she's exactly what you need, no matter her background or status. Selene turned to Era with a respectful bow. My lady, I apologize for my earlier suspicion. Any wolf who would save our king's life deserves our respect and gratitude. I'm not a lady, Era said automatically. My mate, Theon finished firmly, and therefore the future queen of the Northern Territories, if you'll accept me. Era looked at him, this powerful Alpha King who saw her as precious instead of worthless, and felt the mate bond humming through her with undeniable truth. He wasn't lying. This was real. The moon goddess had truly paired her with the Alpha King. Why would you want me? She whispered, voicing the fear that had been clawing at her since her rejection. After Marcus didn't want me, I thought. I thought maybe something was wrong with me. Maybe I really am worthless. There is nothing wrong with you, Theron said, his voice hard with conviction. Marcus rejected you because he's a status-obsessed fool who can't see past political advantage long enough to recognize true worth. But I see you, Era. I see your kindness, your strength, your compassionate heart. And I don't want you as my mate just because the moon goddess chose you. I want you because you're exactly the kind of person I've been hoping to find for over a century. The sincerity in his voice cracked through the last of her defenses, and despite her fear, she found herself stepping closer. I don't know how to be a queen, she whispered. I'll teach you. We'll learn together. He reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and gently took her hand. The mate bond ignited at the contact, warm, comforting, nothing like the painful tug she had felt with Marcus. But you need to understand something, he continued softly. I'm not asking you to accept me out of gratitude or obligation. If you truly don't want this, if being my mate feels too overwhelming, I'll respect that. I'll make sure you're taken care of, help you find a pack where you'll be welcomed, and I'll never trouble you again. Even though we're mates? She asked, stunned. Even then. You were already forced into one bond you didn't choose. I won't do that to you again. Your choice matters, Era. Your feelings matter. You matter. Those words, simple, sincere, were everything she'd needed to hear since her rejection. Everything Marcus had never said, never believed. Looking into Theron's eyes, Era saw no trace of calculation or duty. Only warmth, respect, and genuine care. I'm scared, she admitted, voice trembling. I'm scared of being rejected again, of failing as a queen, of proving everyone right, that I'm worthless. Then we'll be scared together, Theron replied gently, echoing the words she'd spoken to him the night before.
Because I'm terrified too. Terrified of not being good enough for you. Of not being able to help you heal. Of failing to show you how valued and precious you truly are.
Fresh tears slipped down her cheeks, tears that weren't born of pain this time.
You really mean that? Every word, he whispered. You saved my life last night, Era.
Yes, physically, but you also reminded me why I wanted to be king in the first place. To create a world where wolves like you, wolves with kind hearts and compassionate souls, are protected and valued instead of rejected and cast aside.
I want to accept, she whispered.
I want to believe this is real, that I deserve it, but I'm so afraid of being hurt again.
I understand, Theron said. And I'll wait as long as you need. We can take this slowly, get to know each other properly. You can choose when, or if, you're ready to formally accept the bond. He squeezed her hand gently. But for now, will you at least come home with me? Let my healers look after you. Make sure you're healthy after 3 days of wandering alone. Let me show you what your life could be like if you choose to be my mate.
Era looked at the guards surrounding them, expecting suspicion or judgment, but instead found only encouragement and warmth. These wolves had spent the entire night combing through a blizzard to find their missing king, and now they looked at her, a rejected rogue Omega, as if she were someone precious.
Okay, she said at last, feeling a spark of courage steady her voice. I'll come with you, but only to recover and think about everything. I'm not promising anything more.
That's all I'm asking, Theron replied, smiling in a way that sent her heart stumbling.
The journey to the palace took most of the day. Despite his guard's eagerness to get him home, Theron insisted on a slow pace.
He stayed close to Era the entire time, pointing out mountains, rivers, and old pack markers, sharing bits of history and personal stories as if he wanted her to feel connected to the land he ruled.
When the palace finally appeared on the horizon, Era's breath caught.
It rose from the earth like something carved from a dream, its stone walls glowing gold in the afternoon sun. It didn't look like a place Real wolves lived, it looked like something out of a legend.
It's too much, she whispered, panic creeping up her throat. I don't belong here.
Look at me, I'm covered in dirt and blood, I don't have proper clothes.
I'm nobody.
You're mine, Theron said gently.
And that alone makes you someone very important. But if this is overwhelming, we can go somewhere else. I have a cabin in the mountains, quiet, small, peaceful. We can go there instead, away from pressure and politics.
For a moment, the offer tempted her deeply. But she shook her head. No.
If I'm going to consider being your mate, I need to see what your life actually looks like.
No hiding, no running. I have to face this. Pride flickered in Theron's eyes. You're braver than you realize.
When they reached the courtyard, palace staff were already lined up, bowing deeply as their king returned. Era felt swallowed by the sheer number of wolves, by their formality and reverence.
But Theron never once stepped away from her.
He introduced her, not as a rescued rogue, but as his mate and the future queen, and every wolf who bowed to her did so with genuine respect that left her stunned. Your Majesty, an elderly wolf said as they crossed the threshold into the palace.
He bowed so deeply Era feared he might fall. Thank the goddess you're safe. We were terrified when you didn't return. I'm fine, Elder Marcus, Theron said. Thanks to this remarkable Omega.
His hand rested at the small of Era's back, steady and warm, and for the first time since her rejection, she didn't feel invisible.
She felt seen. She saved my life and asked for nothing in return.
The elder's eyes widened as he looked at Era, and she braced herself for the judgment she had learned to expect.
But instead, he bowed deeply to her. Then we are all in your debt, young lady. Welcome to the Northern Palace.
The rooms Theron chose for her were larger than any space she had ever lived in. A massive bed piled high with soft blankets, a private bathroom with steaming hot water, and windows that opened to endless mountain ranges. Within minutes, a group of servants arrived carrying food, fresh clothes, and gentle offers to help her bathe and dress. "This is too much," Era protested, still hovering uncertainly in the doorway, half convinced she would wake up and find this all a dream. "It's exactly what you deserve," Theron said softly. He leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion plain on his face, but he refused to rest until he knew she was comfortable. "And you don't have to make any decisions right now. Rest. Let the healers check you over. We'll talk again when you're ready." After he left, Era allowed the servants to help her into a hot bath. As she sank beneath the water, everything from the last 24 hours finally caught up with her. Yesterday she had been a rejected Omega, alone, hopeless, and unwanted. Today she was being offered a place at the Alpha King's side, the possibility of becoming queen, the chance at the life she had always thought belonged to others. But the wounds Marcus had left were still raw. The fear of being hurt again clung to her like a shadow. How could she trust the bond when she had learned so painfully that mate bonds could break? That love could be outweighed by politics and power? Over the next few days, Theron kept his promise. He gave her space, but never let her feel abandoned. He invited her to share meals, always asking about her opinions and actually listening. He walked with her through the palace, introducing her to his inner circle with genuine pride. He treated her with a respect and gentleness she had never known. And not once did he pressure her to accept the bond. He simply stayed close, patient, steady, everything Marcus had never been. On the fourth day, a delegation arrived from the Silver Pine Pack. When Era saw Marcus Blackwood among them, cold fear washed through her. He must have come for some political matter, nothing related to her, but the sight of him still made her retreat to her rooms, hoping to avoid him entirely. But fate was rarely so kind. When she turned a corner, she came face to face with the Alpha who had rejected her. They both froze. "Era," Marcus said, his voice carrying an emotion she couldn't place. "I heard you were here. I wanted to." "You wanted to what?" The voice slicing through the hallway was so cold it made Era's breath catch. She looked up to see Theron striding toward them, his expression sharp enough to make even Marcus stumble back a step. "Apologize." Theron continued. "Explain why you rejected your mate in front of your entire pack? Beg for forgiveness." "Your Majesty," Marcus stammered, clearly unprepared to find the Alpha King standing there. "I didn't realize you were. I was only trying to speak with my mate." "My mate," Theron corrected, his voice dropping into a dangerous growl. "The Omega you were too blind to value. The woman who spent an entire night saving my life while you were likely celebrating your precious political alliances." Marcus' eyes widened, darting between Theron and Era. "Your mate? But she's just—" "Finish that sentence," Theron said softly, "and I will personally make sure the Silver Pine Pack spends the next decade regretting it." The pressure of Theron's alpha aura slammed into the hallway like a physical force. Marcus collapsed to his knees, shaking under the weight of it. "Era is my mate. My future queen. The most valuable wolf in this entire palace," Theron said, each word deliberate and cutting. "And you rejected her because you were so obsessed with status that you couldn't see the worth standing right in front of you." Era felt something inside her break loose, a release she hadn't realized she'd been waiting for. To see the Alpha who had shattered her heart now kneeling before the king who wanted to mend it, it was more than justice. It was truth made undeniable. "I'm sorry," Marcus choked out, voice strained beneath Theron's dominance. "I didn't know. I thought—" "You thought status mattered more than character," Theron finished icily. "And in doing so, you proved yourself unworthy of the gift the Moon Goddess offered you. Now get out of my sight before I decide you're no longer welcome in my territory." Marcus scrambled away, and the Silver Pine wolves who had been lingering nearby rushed after him without a word. As soon as they were gone, Theron turned to Era, the cold edge in his expression melting into genuine concern. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. "I'm sorry you had to see him. If I'd known he was part of the delegation, I would have made sure you never crossed paths." "Thank you," Era whispered, tears spilling freely.
Thank you for standing up for me, for making him face what he did, for showing me I wasn't the one at fault. You were never the problem, Theron said fiercely, pulling her into his arms with a tenderness that made her chest ache. His rejection had nothing to do with your worth, and everything to do with his inability to recognize it when it was right in front of him. You are precious, Era, Theron murmured, his voice warm with certainty. To me, to the moon goddess, to anyone wise enough to look past politics and see the goodness in your heart. Era pressed her face against his chest, letting the tears come freely at last. Everything she had swallowed, pain, shame, fear, poured out of her in quiet, shaking sobs. And Theron simply held her, whispering gentle reassurances, steady and patient, reminding her that she was safe, valued, and no longer alone. When her tears finally eased, Era lifted her head, eyes still glistening. I want to accept, she whispered. The mate bond. I want to accept you as my mate. Hope ignited in Theron's gaze, bright and unrestrained. Are you sure? You don't have to choose because of what happened with Marcus. If you need more time, take it. I don't need more time, she said, voice firm despite its softness. I've watched you these last 4 days, how gentle you've been, how respectful, how you've shown me what it feels like to be seen. To be valued. To be treated as a partner instead of a burden. I'm still afraid, and I'm still healing, but I want to do that with you. I choose you, Theron. I choose us. A smile broke over his face, bright enough to chase away the shadows lingering in her heart. He pulled her into his arms again. Thank you, he breathed. Thank you for trusting me. I'll spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice. When his lips met hers, it felt like stepping into the warmth of a home she'd never known but had always longed for. The mate bond surged between them, settling into something strong, steady, and unshakable. And in that moment, Era finally understood the moon goddess's intention. Her rejection hadn't been a dead end. It had been a doorway, one that guided her to exactly where she was meant to be. Marcus's rejection had not diminished her. It had freed her to find the mate who truly saw her, who cherished her not for what she could offer politically, but for who she was at her core. A week later, wolves from every region gathered for the formal ceremony. Era stood beside Theron before hundreds of witnesses, her hand in his, her heart calm. There was no fear, only certainty that this was real and right and hers. When their bond was sealed with a kiss that sent shimmering magic spiraling through the air, she caught sight of Marcus in the crowd. His expression was heavy with regret, but she felt nothing for him. He had walked away from her. And in doing so, he had cleared the path to something infinitely better. She had never been broken. She had never been less than deserving. She was resilient, compassionate, brave, and now she stood as queen beside an alpha who recognized all of that and loved her for it. The Omega who had been cast aside, wandering alone in a blizzard, had done the impossible. She had saved the life of a king and in the process, discovered her own true worth. Her legacy would not be defined by the rejection she endured or the status she lacked, but by the strength, courage, and compassion that had captured the gaze of the moon goddess herself. Sometimes rejection is simply the moon goddess guiding you toward your true path. Sometimes a single act of kindness can change everything. And sometimes the Omega everyone underestimated is exactly the one a king needs to make him whole.